Hi, this is Teddy, and today you're listening to Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action, on Two Broads Talking Politics.
Are you listening?
Hi, everyone. This is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, and I am on today with returning guest Shannon Watts from Moms Demand Action. So hi, Shannon.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to have you back on the podcast. So we spoke about a year and a half ago, I think, and the world has changed a lot since then.
For sure.
So we are, of course, right in the middle of this election season. There's a lot of focus, for good reason, on the top of the ticket. But you have been doing this series of conversations on Instagram with gun sense candidates all the way down the ballot. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and about all of the other important kinds of races people should be thinking about.
Yeah, during quarantine, we discovered that there was this appetite for conversations, I think particularly with women, and we decided to call it Demanding Women, which I love because we're Moms Demand Action. And in the first couple of months when we were on stay-at-home orders, I had the opportunity to speak with all of these amazing women who were being considered as vice presidential candidates. Stacey Abrams, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, Congresswoman Val Demings, even former National Security Advisor Susan Rice, of course, Kamala Harris and others. And it was just a really great opportunity for our volunteers to hear directly from these leaders about what they're thinking about gun violence and that crisis, but particularly during the COVID pandemic. And in fact, we know that COVID is exacerbating gun violence. So these were really fascinating conversations. And after that series wrapped, I thought about all the amazing Moms Demand Action volunteers who have gotten involved in this work and then been inspired to run for office themselves. In fact, this year, this election cycle, over 100 Moms Demand Action volunteers are on the ballot. And about 51 of those are volunteer leaders. So I wanted to talk to them as part of a sort of Demanding Women 2.0. And I have those conversations on my Instagram Live. And it's kind of a perk of quarantine time for me that I can support so many of our volunteers running virtually.
Yeah, it's I think Moms Demand Action had always been very good at sort of changing with the circumstances and being creative. But it seems like you adapted very quickly to this new world that we're in and found ways to really make the best of it and have these great conversations, move meetings online. What does that look like in the organization and for you?
We were really made for this moment. I started Moms Demand Action as a Facebook page. And so we were able to pivot very quickly to taking this work from in person back online. I think what I have learned over the last, 7 months now is that the technology that we have invested in for almost 8 years now, technology that we make available to every volunteer, not just leaders in the organization, things like apps to text and to create phone banks and a Zoom page for every volunteer and Hustle and all these different innovative ways to get out the vote and connect, not just to people in your community, but to one another. It's really made us more inclusive and more equitable. And so doing this work online is sort of natural for us anyway, but I found that we're as successful and effective online as we are offline. And I don't think we'll ever go back to just doing things in person. I think we'll always have this component. We've already made over 200,000 phone calls to voters. We've already registered over 100,000 voters. We've already texted tens of thousands of times. So this work, this reaching out to constituents and telling them who their gun sense candidates are, and also who, when, how to vote, all of those things, how to make a plan, are are incredibly effective ways to get out the vote.
And you even moved your annual Gun Sense University to a virtual program this year, too.
That's right. We have every year we bring our leaders together. We had over 2,000 RSVPs to get together this year in Las Vegas. We had to pivot and do it online, and we had even more people from all over the country participate. So again, I think it goes to show how inclusive, how equitable these technologies are, and also how important they are to stay connected. I think during this time of isolation and COVID, people want to reach out and connect to one another socially, but also as activists.
So I think gun violence has been a little bit less sort of present in a lot of people's thinking lately because of the pandemic. We don't have quite as many highly visible mass shootings, although of course there are still mass shootings happening. But as you noted, it exacerbates gun violence in different kinds of ways. How do you make sure that people sort of keep this at the forefront of their thinking? And what are the ways that the pandemic has changed a little bit the nature of what gun violence looks like in this country?
Well, first of all, we've seen a historic number of gun sales since COVID crisis began. And we know that is exacerbating gun violence. Women are isolated with abusers who have easy access to guns. Kids and teens are at home, maybe with easy access to unsecured firearms, or they're struggling with suicidal ideation. That goes for adults too. We are now estimating at least 5,000 to 7,000 additional gun suicides this year on top of the 25,000 that we already expect. We know city gun violence is exacerbated by the fact that violence interruption activists can't get out and interact with the community. They have to do their work virtually, and funding is being cut for some of these really important programs. So it is important to keep having these conversations, to talk to people about secure gun storage and funding for these programs, stronger gun laws. Not only does that fade in the background during COVID, I think it's actually more important than it's ever been.
Are you finding that that people are having those conversations? I think about the people who are home more and the importance of course, as you mentioned, women who are home with abusers, but also, kids are just home more and playing around the house, trying to find things to do, maybe more likely to stumble onto guns. What sorts of things are you seeing? What sorts of conversations are people having to make sure that they are continuing to be safe in this kind of environment?
I'm really worried about when schools are back up and running in earnest. We haven't had any school shootings in the last 6 months or so because we haven't had school. We know that most school shooters are students and that they have easy access to guns in their homes. And so talking about secure storage is so incredibly important right now, especially again with the historic number of gun sales, many of them to first-time gun buyers in states where there may not be a permit required or training that goes along with that gun purchase. We have been Zooming in virtually to school board meetings all across the country, urging them to send our Be Smart materials home. Be Smart is our program to teach people about keeping guns locked, unloaded, separate from ammunition. And we've had a lot of success in different school districts across the country in getting these materials sent home. We've invested a great deal in advertising, but it is important that people are educated about secure gun storage right now.
Yeah, my son the other day, I have two sons. One of them is in third grade, and he doesn't actually remember active shooter drills because it's been, 7 months since he's been in a school building, which in a way is good. I'm glad that he is not thinking about those, but it does sort of just highlight how different things are right now. I don't have to be worried about him when he leaves the house because he doesn't leave the house without me anymore.
That's exactly right. And, speaking of school drills, we came out with a report recently with really important new data, which shows that these drills are not necessarily effective, but they are traumatizing to many students, teachers, and parents. They cause sleeplessness, worsening school performance, fear of death. And we are making a lot of recommendations in that report about these drills, the fact that they need to be trauma informed, that they should not simulate gun violence, that parents should have a heads up and teachers before they occur. So I would encourage everyone to go to momsdemandaction.org to learn more about that report.
So we recently, of course, lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a hero of a lot of ours. And now we are dealing with these Supreme Court hearings for a nominee who has made it very clear that she has a very expansive view of the Second Amendment. How do you take a moment like that, a moment like RBG's passing, and use it to sort of find strength and keep fighting and not get devastated by the current moment that we're in?
Well, I mean, it's okay to feel down, and it's okay to grieve, the lack of normalcy, the bizarre experience that we've had as Americans over the last 4 years. And certainly the death of Justice Ginsburg was a huge blow just 6 weeks before the election. But if I know anything, it's that she would want us to keep going and to not give up. And her voice and her courage are deeply missed already. There's no doubt that we are a better, safer country because of her fierce determination. Last year, when the Supreme Court heard its first major Second Amendment case in almost a decade, it was Justice Ginsburg who dismantled the gun lobby's argument and championed common sense gun legislation, as she did so many times before. So her legacy will certainly live on in the generations of Americans she has inspired to take up the law in service of our country's highest ideals. And I also understand concerns about Amy Coney Barrett's nomination. Her views on gun laws are extreme and dangerous. If she's confirmed, there are a wide range of life-saving gun laws that could be at risk. Senate Republicans have taken no action on gun violence prevention, and all of a sudden they're trying to rush Judge Barrett onto the Supreme Court while a presidential election is already underway. The election doesn't happen on November 3rd. It ends November 3rd. So, we've been unequivocally opposing her confirmation before Inauguration Day. But bottom line is, we have to make Donald Trump and Senate Republicans pay at the ballot box in November for trying to steal this Supreme Court seat.
So thinking in a happier vein about, a hopeful Biden-Harris administration, Moms Demand Action, of course, existed before the Trump presidency. Getting Democrats into office isn't the end. It's the beginning of the fight for safer gun legislation. So if in fact Biden and Harris manage to win the White House, especially if Democrats manage to win the Senate, what are the kinds of gun legislation that you will be pushing for them to adopt?
Well, there's no doubt that Vice President Biden and Senator Harris are the strongest gun safety ticket ever. They have made this issue a focus of their campaign. They have a comprehensive plan to address gun violence in America. The contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump on this issue could not be more stark. Joe Biden has spent a lifetime fighting for gun safety, while Donald Trump has spent his entire administration and presidency really bowing to the NRA. So if the Biden-Harris ticket is elected, we have this historic opportunity to finally pass the first gun safety legislation in 25 years. And we really have to seize that opportunity. Joe Biden was instrumental in passing the last gun safety legislation package back in 1994. But now in 2020, and he and Senator Harris are talking about doing this in the first 100 days of their administration. They should pass background checks on all gun sales. It's something 93% of Americans support. Right now, you can buy a gun from a private seller in most states without a background check. Only 22 states have closed that loophole. We also need to pass something called a red flag law. We've passed this now in 19 states, and essentially it allows families or police to petition a court for a temporary restraining order to make sure that people who are in crisis do not have access to a gun because they're a risk to themselves or others. And usually there are warning signs before those tragedies. And so the red flag law is very effective. And then the third thing is, as I mentioned before, we have to make sure that we are funding city gun violence programs. And There are these local violence intervention programs that have been shown by data to be effective to slow gun violence in city centers. And it helps the people in these organizations on the ground save lives in their communities. And the Biden-Harris administration has already pledged hundreds of millions of dollars to fund those programs. So there's even more that we can do, but those changes alone would fundamentally transform gun safety in America and save countless lives. And the bottom line really is that Joe Biden has been taking on the NRA and winning for years. So I have little doubt that these things are already on his mind, and no doubt he'll get them done when he's in the White House.
So I think a lot of people who are, fairly new to thinking a lot about politics, just from the past few years, don't yet have the experience of pushing their, they might be used to sort of pushing back, resisting, so to speak, against the people who they didn't get into power, but are not yet used to continuing to push the people that they did help elect. But I know that that's something that your Moms Demand volunteers do have experience with, that, helping someone get elected doesn't mean they're going to automatically do everything that you would hope that they do. What advice do you have for listeners, assuming, again, that we do manage to vote in better gun sense candidates this year, to keep pushing, to keep making sure that that they are held accountable for the kinds of promises that they made in campaigns?
Well, we can't let up after we win this election in November. We have to keep going, just like we did in 2016. There were a lot of people who thought it was hopeless on this issue when Donald Trump took $30 million from the NRA and had a Republican Congress for 2 years. And yet the gun lobby was not able to pass a single piece of their priority legislation through. And that's because we've gotten so good as a movement at playing defense. We have a 90% track record in state houses of stopping the NRA's agenda every year for the last 5 years. So it's important to remember that, yes, playing offense matters. It's how we've passed so many good gun laws in state houses. It's how we've passed or changed the policies at so many corporations around open carry in this country. But you also have to make sure you're stopping this special interests agenda year after year. And that doesn't stop just because, we have the right president and the right Congress. There will always be a gun lobby trying to undo the wins that we've gained. So activism is the rent we pay to live on the planet, is what I think Alice Walker said. And that's exactly right. But also, activism is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes several election cycles, but it's also a relay race. And so we talk a lot about self-care. If you need to hand that baton over for a day, a week, a month, and let other people do the work while you take care of yourself or your family or your community, you should do that. I've done that several times over the last almost 8 years, and I promise you the work will be there when you get back.
So it is a marathon, but right now we are in sprint mode. We have 2 weeks left until the election. What are your pieces of advice for people in these last 2 weeks, how to do absolutely as much as we can to make sure that Joe Biden wins and that gun sense candidates win up and down the ballot everywhere?
Leave it all on the field. We have got to keep our foot on the gas all the way until election night, possibly beyond, given that it may be uncertain, the outcome of the election night. But we have to do everything we can to get out the vote. And certainly we thought we would be, wearing out our sneakers, knocking doors. Instead, we're wearing out our voices on phone banks. We're wearing out our batteries, sending texts and tweets. And there are so many ways to get involved. Even if you live in a state with good lawmakers, good gun laws, you should be calling into the 13 battleground states or texting. And we have a website called gunsensevoter.org, and it allows people to do exactly that, to plug in and to get involved and to reach out all across the country, up and down the ballot, to ensure victory. I mean, I was talking, this Demanding Women series I mentioned earlier, I was talking to one of the candidates and she won by less than 400 votes. That happens all the time on election night. So know that the work you're doing to help elect candidates all over the country. It matters.
All right. Is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talk about today?
I would just add that it's really important to know who your gun sense candidates are. We have a website, gunsensevoter.org. Lots of things at that website, everything from how to get involved to know where your candidates stand specifically. We've given out over 3,000 of these up and down the ballot this election cycle in 49 states. And it really does go to show that this issue, which used to be a political third rail, is now actually an issue that candidates are running on and winning on. No other issue has such broad support as gun safety in this country. And we know that it energizes people to get out to the polls. And so if you want to get involved in election work, this is a really important and effective way to do so.
We will put that link on our website so people can find it. So Shannon, thank you so much for joining me again. And thank you too for just everything that you're doing and for being such an inspiration for these past 8 years.
Thank you so much. That's kind.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.